What difference do you think a single individual can make amid all this chaos? If you die, it might seem like it's all for nothing. Most Hollywood careers follow a familiar pattern. You climb the ladder, reach your peak, either adapt or fade away. However, Jim Caviezel's career defies that typical trajectory. That typical trajectory. When you look closely, beyond the headlines and controversies, you discover something truly rare, not just in Hollywood, but in public life as a whole. Caviezel is someone whose convictions are deeply ingrained and wholly integrated into his identity, creating a foundation upon which his entire career has been built. The story isn't about religion or politics. It's about identity and what happens when a person refuses to divide themselves into two separate beings. One for their personal life and another for their on-screen roles. In an industry that essentially demands such a split as the cost of entry. If you strip away the film's controversies and cultural noise, what remains is one of the most consistent and costly demonstrations of personal conviction in modern Hollywood. So what truly happened to Jim Caviezel? Let's fade to black. Before all the defining roles, controversies, and cultural flashpoints, Caviezel almost gave up. He was struggling, his career was stagnant, and doubt weighed heavily on him. He seriously considered quitting acting altogether. Then, Terrence Malick cast him in The Thin Red Line. This is more significant than it might first appear because Malick doesn't create commercial movies. He crafts meditations. The Thin Red Line is ostensibly a war film, but in reality, it's an exploration of the inner lives of men under extreme stress, their fears, moral confusion, and what survives inside a person when all external distractions are stripped away. Caviezel's portrayal of private wit carries a quiet, almost transcendent presence throughout the film, surrounded by some of Hollywood's biggest names. Sean Penn, Nick Nolte, Woody Harrelson. He doesn't compete. He simply exists on screen with a calm stillness that is difficult to fabricate. This was a defining moment for him, setting the standard for what serious, meaningful work looked like. And understanding this is crucial for everything that followed in his career. Starting his career with a film directed by one of the most philosophically ambitious filmmakers set a high standard for him from the outset, making it difficult to settle for anything less in the future. This early achievement with The Thin Red Line didn't just preserve his career, it likely defined the principles by which he would always operate. Following the success of that film, mainstream opportunities began to open up for him. In 2000, he demonstrated significant versatility with two very different roles. First, in Frequency, he portrayed John Sullivan, a son who discovers he can communicate with his deceased father through a shortwave radio, blending emotional depth with a high-concept thriller narrative that resonated well with audience. This film revealed a warmth and accessibility that contrasted with the more intense, challenging work he was known for. Then he took on the role of a homeless drug addict in Pay It Forward, a character at rock bottom both physically and morally, requiring him to shed any vanity and fully embrace the portrayal of genuine suffering. Even at this early stage, a pattern emerged in his choices if one paid attention. In 2001, he starred opposite Jennifer Lopez in Angel Eyes, a romantic drama designed to catapult him into mainstream stardom by pairing him with one of the biggest female stars of the time. However, critics noted a certain restraint in their intimate scenes, describing their interaction as a push-pull dynamic that lacked the spark needed to convince audiences of their romantic chemistry. The reason behind this, looking back, was clear. He had established firm personal boundaries out of respect for his wife, and a strong belief in the sanctity of marriage, refusing to do nudity and insisting on modest intimacy on screen. While this was perfectly aligned with his personal values, commercially it imposed a limitation, as the archetypal leading man in Hollywood typically relies on presence, charm, and undeniable romantic chemistry, with a female lead to succeed at the box office. Audiences must completely believe in the connection an actor portrays. If actor is visibly holding back or merely managing the moment instead of fully inhabiting it, the camera inevitably picks up on that hesitance. This truth was a persistent question hovering over his career long before his breakthrough role. Then, in 2002, came his portrayal of Edmond Dantes in The Count of Monte Cristo, a fully classical leading man role. Dantes, a man wrongfully imprisoned and driven by revenge but ultimately redeemed, offered a character that was romantic, physical, and deeply accessible, positioning him as a genuine star in the making. Looking across his body of work, a clear pattern emerges. His characters consistently endure suffering, face moral dilemmas, and are tested by forces far greater than themselves, revealing a sensibility that was always fully formed, even if Hollywood had yet to grasp its full implication. The role that made this implicit sensibility explicit was his casting in Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Gibson was upfront with him from the start, warning that taking the part could cost him his career, as Hollywood might retreat and close the mainstream window that had opened for him. Just 2 days after Caviezel accepted the role, Gibson called him back, almost giving him a chance to reconsider, explicitly stating that taking the role might mean never working in Hollywood again. Caviezel's response was resolute: "We all have our own cross to carry." What followed was one of the most physically demanding productions in modern cinema history. During the Sermon on the Mount scene, he was struck by lightning. He was accidentally whipped twice during filming, which left a 14-inch scar across his back. He dislocated a shoulder carrying the 150-pound cross. And he endured hypothermia and pneumonia while shooting in freezing Italian winters. On set, he went into atrial fibrillation, and a doctor warned Gibson that Caviezel could die. He later needed 2 heart surgeries, including open heart surgery after filming Rat. Despite these hardships, the film became a phenomenal success, grossing over $600 million worldwide. As Gibson had predicted, the cultural impact was profound, and gradually, mainstream opportunities for Caviezel began to diminish. But it's important to clarify what this decline really entailed, since it wasn't the result of any formal blacklist or official studio agreement to exclude him. Hollywood doesn't function that way. Instead, the change was more subtle yet equally revealing. Phone calls became less frequent, his name appeared less often on shortlists, and roles that would have naturally suited him were given to others. While he continued to work on films like The Final Cut and Déjà Vu, these parts were primarily supporting roles rather than leading ones. Caviezel himself described the shift candidly. "All of a sudden, I stopped being one of the 5 most popular actors in Hollywood, and I hadn't done anything wrong. I just played Jesus." From an outsider's perspective, director Shane Black was more straightforward, suggesting that Caviezel was effectively blacklisted because people simply didn't want to collaborate with him. The reasons circulating at the time were multifaceted. Gibson's own reputation was already complicated within certain Hollywood circles, and associating with him on such a controversial project posed professional risks. However, the controversy surrounding the film and its director only exacerbated pre-existing issues. Studios were already navigating around an actor who refused to do nudity, maintained distance from intimate scenes, and upheld personal non-negotiables that the industry was unaccustomed to accommodating. Thus, rather than a single door closing, multiple doors shut simultaneously. This situation invites a comparison that highlights what truly sets Caviezel apart: his co-star in Déjà Vu, Denzel Washington. Washington is openly and sincerely devout, has spoken publicly about his faith, and it is a significant part of his identity, yet this faith is almost entirely absent from his choice of roles. He has portrayed corrupt cops, drug dealers, and hitmen, showing a clear distinction between personal belief and professional choices. Caviezel chose a path very different from those who separate their professional and personal identities. Rather than making peace with this division, he seemed either unable or unwilling to compartmentalize his work from his core beliefs, allowing his convictions to deeply inform every role he undertook and every story he chose to tell. This fundamental choice shaped everything that followed in his career, imbuing his projects with a distinctive intensity and moral urgency. While the years after his initial success were quieter, they were far from empty, featuring projects like Outlander in 2008, a genre film about a warrior stranded on an alien world who abides by a strict internal code, and the stoning of Soraya and M, also from 2008, which stands as perhaps the clearest expression of the recurring theme of bearing witness to injustice. A journalist exposing a horrific wrong and carrying the heavy Although these films did not achieve commercial success, they highlighted Caviezel's recurring role as the outsider, driven by a personal code. The man who witnesses terrible truths and refuses to remain silent, regardless of the personal cost. Then, in 2011, Person of Interest brought him a long-awaited stability, starring as John Reese for 5 seasons on network television. His character was quiet, stoic, controlled, operating outside societal norms, but guided by an unyielding moral compass. This role perfectly suited him, providing consistency, a devoted audience, and creative freedom. For 5 years, the distractions faded as he became a familiar and welcome presence in viewers' homes every week. In 2014, during a break between seasons, he took on When the Game Stands Tall, portraying a coach and surrogate father figure in a story about sacrifice and the enduring impact of building character beyond wins and losses. After Person of Interest ended in 2016, Caviezel returned to smaller projects before starring in Sound of Freedom. To truly grasp why this film felt different and was not just another role, one must consider a crucial piece of context that is often overlooked amid the surrounding controversy. Caviezel and his wife have adopted children, including some with significant medical needs, making issues of child trafficking and vulnerability deeply personal and profoundly motivating for him. These themes in Sound of Freedom are not mere abstract ideas or distant concerns, but reflect the lived experiences and emotional realities that have shaped his family and worldview. His journey with the film echoed a painful, complicated past marked by betrayal and isolation. 2 agents and his lawyer abandoned him over his unwavering commitment to the project, and the controversy surrounding his role. This backlash within the industry strikingly mirrored the divisive response that followed The Passion of the Christ. Yet, rather than succumbing to despair, Caviezel stayed resolute, completed the film with determination, and consciously rejected adopting a victim mentality. The movie eventually achieved notable commercial success and sparked intense cultural controversy, sharply dividing audiences and critics alike. His candid, polarizing interviews in which he openly expressed his beliefs and frustrations provoked strong reactions, both supportive and hostile, but through it all, his conviction and sincerity remained genuine and unshaken. After nearly 3 decades of quiet advocacy and behind-the-scenes efforts, he finally felt compelled to speak openly and publicly, fully aware of the risks and potential professional consequences. His body of work consistently explored enduring themes of suffering, resilience, and injustice, embodying the perspective of a father and outsider driven by a deeply held moral code and desire for redemption. Unlike most Hollywood professionals who carefully separate their private lives from their public personas, Caviezel refused to make that distinction, a stance that cost him mainstream opportunities, representation, and access to powerful industry networks. Despite ongoing resistance and pushback from the entertainment establishment, he remains active, vocal, and uncompromising in his mission. Ultimately, the key takeaway is not the obstacles or betrayals he faced, but his unwavering integrity, courage, and steadfast pursuit of his convictions in the face of adversity. The remarkable thing is that in one of the loudest and most transactional industries in the world, he stayed stubbornly and completely true to himself, even when it came at a real cost. In such a noisy environment, that level of authenticity is truly impressive. Thank you very much for watching. If you appreciate this kind of content, please consider liking, commenting, subscribing, or doing all 3. It really makes a significant difference to the channel. As always, I genuinely look forward to seeing you all in the next video.